Call to the honourable member for Warringah.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, methane is 80 times more potent in capturing heat than CO2 in the first 20 years. Yes, Australia does not enforce international best practice when it comes to measurement and capture of methane. Will you support implementing international best practice in measurement and abatement of methane, as I've proposed in the amendments to the Safeguard Mechanism, in light of the dire but clear warning in the latest IPCC report that we are on track to catastrophic warming?
The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for her question. And indeed, the IPCC report today does call for urgent, substantial and sustained emissions reduction. Methane and all the carbon gases, Mr Speaker. All of them. And, Mr Speaker, that's exactly what the government intends to do, to lock in. Honourable members opposite might not like reducing emissions, but that's what the Australian people have voted for, and that's what the world demands, Mr Speaker. That's what the world demands, and that's what future generations demand, and that's exactly what we will do. Because, Mr Speaker, what the IPCC report today reminds us is that there is agency and urgency. There is still time to hold the world as close as possible to 1.5 degrees, but we don't have long. We must act. And, Mr Speaker, this week the parliament can act, because in 100 days the Safeguard Mechanism reforms can be in place if the parliament approves them. This is the most important opportunity we have. 205 million tonnes of emissions removed from the atmosphere if the Safeguard Mechanism reforms pass. I know honourable members have raised fossil fuels and resources. Today, as we speak, emissions from fossil fuel facilities covered by the Safeguards system are 73 million tonnes a year. Business as usual, with no reforms, they are projected to grow to 83 million tonnes a year, Mr Speaker. But if the reforms pass, it will be net 52 million tonnes, Mr Speaker. That's the choice the parliament has. 83 million or 52. That's the choice the parliament has this week and next week. And I'll say this. Last year the parliament passed the government's Climate Change Act. And I thank members of the crossbench, all of them who supported it, and in the other place. This was important. And some honourable members opposite said 43 is not enough. And I understand that and respect that. I respect their point of view, and I thank them for coming together in goodwill to pass that. But know this. Our projections are very clear. If the Safeguard Mechanism reforms are not passed, 43% will not be met. Our projections show it will be 35%, Mr Speaker. So if honourable members are going to call for higher targets, they are obliged to vote for action to get those targets achieved, Mr Speaker.
The Minister
that is the obligation, honourable members. You can't call for higher targets.
The Minister will pause. The member for Wright. I want to hear from the member for Warringah on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On relevance, the question did go to methane specifically.
I'm going to ask the order. I'm going to ask the Minister to return to the question. It was a specific question, and I bring the Minister back to the question.
I do want to see methane emissions reduced. I do. I want to see all carbon emissions reduced, Mr Speaker. That's why I want to see the Safeguards Mechanism reforms passed. I know this. There will be no constraint on methane. There will be no constraint on CO2. There will be no constraint on any carbon gases unless the Safeguard reforms pass the parliament this fortnight. That's the case. Now, the honourable member is correct. Methane is a very important gas for us to measure and to work with industry to see emissions reduced. That is very important. And if there are good faith suggestions, I have and will continue to listen to them. But the most important thing is that these reforms pass, or to be business as usual, and business as usual is not acceptable.
The call to the member